Welcome to Cognitive Rampage podcast. Your host, Adam Lowry, as usual. Uh, I feel like I was in a rush because I could not make Google Hangout work. It was driving me insane. And yes, it was our fault at the studio, but finally we managed to make it work over here. And I have a lot of people been interested, brother, to listening to you on the show. By the way, the guest is Lee Camp. Thanks for being here again, man, for coming back on.
Thanks. I'm so relieved it was your fault because I'm a moron when it comes to this stuff. So
Oh man, it definitely was, man. But I'm glad you came back on. You know, last time I interviewed you, I think you were episode 27. I think, yeah,
oh wow.
yeah. Now 90. Your boy's come a long way, Lee.
Well, we're at 111.
Yeah, man. So we're not too far behind. You guys are at 111, except you're about, I don't know, 80 million more people than we are.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
All right, we just keep driving like an addiction, right? Just keep fighting the bullshit of all this addiction, man. But I mean, look, you're one of the guys I started following a long time ago when I was kind of breaking out of that conservative what the fuck is going on here shell. I call it waking up.
Yeah.
And you know, my wife's actually not too far from the studio, which is one of the first times actually, but she knows like when you came in and I'm just watching the shit out of it going, "What the fuck?" I mean, I couldn't watch an episode, dude, and not go, "Why is no one talking about any of this shit?"
Yeah. That's. I mean, that's why it's called Redacted tonight, and that's part of the hope. And that considering how much shit I have to write, that I have to write so much comedy and everything. There's times where I'm like, well, this isn't the funniest thing I've ever written, but as long as I have something in there where I'm gonna make people go, "What? You gotta be kidding me!" Like then I'll be like, well, they're not going home empty-handed. They're even if it's not my funniest bit in the world, they're not going home empty-handed.
Dude, look, it's hard sometimes because some of the shit that you guys are dropping is it's like cognitive dissonance explosion. So the fact if you didn't have humor in there, dude, it would be like the Zeitgeist fucking documentary over and over again. People would just
Nah.
be losing their shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure people don't drive their bridge off a car. I mean, sorry, their car off a bridge. That's how long I've been working these past few days. I'm trying to make sure people don't drive their bridge off a car. Ugh.
Man, but no, some of that shit you guys put together, man, is seamless as fuck. Those opening monologues are murderous, but I mean, and you really grabbed a hold from the TPP long ago, man. I was trying to voice that shit out, did a video myself. That's one of those things to where I'm like, holy, what the fuck is happening? You know, and
Yeah. Well, and I loved. I mean, let's put it this way: we all love being right, but
yeah,
I love being right when you don't see it for like 4 years. When I first started talking about the TPP, and basically it was just like, I'm not a genius. I just was the people I was reading. They've been doing this a lot longer than I have, like Noam Chomsky and stuff. When they talk about these trade deals and they explain what these trade deals are for, why our government wants them, and I just knew you don't start a giant secretive trade deal and not fucking ram it through. Like I knew it would come to pass eventually. So now here we are finally, 4 years later after my first video, or maybe 5 years, whatever. 4 years, 4 or 5 years after I started talking about it, and now the mainstream media suddenly acts like they just found out about it yesterday because Obama now is talking about it, and we got candidates talking about it, and they're all. And yeah, you have Hillary and Trump acting wishy-washy on it because they don't want to alienate people, but that thing's going to get rammed through after November. Unless we see some massive protest movements about it. But it's an insane trade deal that's been around for. They've been pushing for, well, creating for 4 or 5 years, and only 25% of it has to do with trade. All the rest is about locking down the internet, locking down profit for corporations over all our environmental laws or anything else that we want as a country. And it's just corporate greed is all it is.
yeah, man, and the fuck 4 years. So thank you, man. You saying that and finally having Obama talk about it. I mean, you got to chalk that up as that's a victory, right? That's a movement you started by noticing this, 4 years.
Well, it's a victory for me and maybe some small part of my ego, but it's a loss for mankind.
Thank you. Yes, thank you,
you
man.
know, look, if I could be wrong about everything and we just end up in a utopia tomorrow and everyone's skipping around and I'm like, fuck, I was wrong. I will take it. I will take it.
Yeah, excuse the fucking fast language. That was a way to, yeah, victory. All right, you got something noticed, but we're all fucked still with the agreement. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. So, I mean, I know you try to keep this in a half an hour, man, and there's a lot of shit to explain with this Hillary fraud election thing. How it's went down. You've done how many episodes now have you dedicated to this?
Oh God, I'd say we probably done at least 10 that had a large chunk about election fraud, and then probably some other mentions here and there. But it's amazing. It almost seems like the media is trying to act not just ignorant that it's going on, but when they do bring it up, it's like they're trying to act like they don't know what they're talking about, even when they're trying to pretend like they know what they're talking about. So recently, it's back in the news. Well, okay, let me back up, because for your listeners who maybe haven't been paying as much attention to this, which why would you? Why drown yourself in this stuff? Um,
Our
there's
fucking
a lot
man.
of different there's a lot of different levels of election fraud that we've seen going on, and election fraud is different from voter fraud. Voter fraud is what the Republicans try and say is going on, which is a guy showing up at two polling places on election day, one of them with a fake mustache, saying, "I am a different person and I would like to vote again." That never happens. Never. It's like they've arrested like 6 people and like 5 of them were bullshit. Like, it never happens. So that's voter fraud. Election fraud is, the votes being counted wrong, people being knocked off voter rolls, polling places being closed intentionally, and we see it constantly. You see it in the 120,000 people kicked off the rolls in Brooklyn alone, and then people were fired over it, meaning they're admitting some shit went down. If people are fired for it, something went down. And so all of that is part of it. Then you have incredibly hackable voting machines. You have The Guardian just yesterday putting out an article where a former longtime election judge in Maryland says hacking many of our machines would be quote unquote child's play. That's from the Guardian newspaper talking to an election judge. Now, you have that stuff going on. And then you have like CNN. This is all within the past few days. Donald Trump has been saying, "Oh, maybe the elections will be rigged," and Donald Trump's a moron, but he might have that part right. And then Hannity agrees with him and says the elections are rigged. Then you have reliable sources on CNN saying Hannity is a moron and everything, but not for the right reasons. Hannity is a moron. Don't get me wrong there. He is a moron.
I'll
But
second that.
this reliable sources on CNN, Brian Stelter says he goes election fraud does not happen, and then he starts calling it voter fraud as if he doesn't know the difference between the two, which maybe he doesn't, which is a whole other level of stupid that I guess he could be on.
I'm surprised.
But and it's if your listeners right now don't know the difference, that's fine. You're not hosting reliable sources on CNN. There is a difference between voter fraud and election fraud, and this guy either doesn't know it, in which case he shouldn't be talking about this shit, or he does know it and he's acting willfully ignorant. And it's like that's the reliable sources show on CNN. That's the show that they claim is holding journalism accountable. It's like that's the level of stupidity we're dealing with.
I mean, keep going, man. Look, this is all your rampage, brother. Half an hour, just go off on that political rampage or that redacted rampage. That actually goes good together. You can use that.
Yeah, that sounds good together, redacted rampage. Well, a lot of people are standing up about this election fraud. We have machines, many of them are 10 and 15 years old, because different counties or different states have different machines. Many of them are 10 or 15 years old. You literally have no idea whether your vote is counted or not. The machine screen may say, "Oh yeah, we got it covered," but we're not allowed to see the source code. They call it trademarked, and they say the corporation won't let us see it. You're not allowed to see the source code. You're not allowed to see anything that can prove that this is a legit system. And then you have things like the audit in Chicago. Chicago during the primary is forced to do an audit of 5% of their machines, and witnesses are allowed to come and watch the voting machines be audited. So while they're doing this, the machines are getting it all wrong. They're overcounting for Hillary almost every time. What? So something's going on. Either the machines just happen to all be wrong, or there is some legitimate like election fraud, intentional election fraud as opposed to accidental election fraud. And so the witnesses all say, this is what we see. Now, they then bring that to the Chicago Board of Elections, and you watch this video online, and the Chicago Board of Elections looks them in the face and says, oh, let me see how many fucks we give. Oh, 0. They basically just say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You couldn't possibly have seen what you think you saw. And it's so you can see these machines are not accurate.
Nor
Then you have
we can't even you can't see them, you can't check them. They're just reported machines to us. I mean, that we don't. Oh my God.
We're just supposed to trust it. And then you have the exit polls in many states in the primary were way off on the Democratic side, but we're dead right on the Republican side. So it's just the Democratic side showing better results should have come out for Bernie and did not. And then the voting machines say Hillary did better. And whenever people bring this up, we started bringing this up, exit poll gate, the hashtag started trending on Twitter. It started actually, which hashtag I created, it started becoming a real issue. They canceled the exit polling for the final states. California, New Jersey, all of them didn't have any exit polling.
How?
So, well, because the media consortium is the one that pays for exit polling, so they are able to cancel it at any time.
Oh,
so they cancel the exit polling, and then you have people that want to, the Washington Post, New York Times are two that did it. Want to call me or other people talking about this stuff, morons. And the way they do this is they say, oh, exit polling doesn't matter at all, even though in other countries elections are overturned from exit polling. Exit polling doesn't matter at all, and therefore these guys don't know what they're talking about. Now let's think about this. Even if they were right, let's assume they're right. Exit polls mean nothing, and nobody knows what they're talking about. Mathematicians, everybody who's perfected exit polling doesn't mean anything. Don't know what they're talking about. Okay, well then that article that you're writing should be, we have no way to legitimize our election. That should be the headline. That should be everything you talk about. Oh my God, we have no way to legitimize our elections because we can't see the code. We can't see inside these computers, and we're told exit polling is meaningless. So that should be what everybody's talking about. But instead, they spend their time saying, oh no, exit polling doesn't matter. Therefore, election fraud people that claim there's election fraud are idiots. It totally, it blows the mind. And then there's been lawsuits about many of these things. Bob Fitzgerald has put forward a lawsuit in Ohio demanding the raw exit poll data. Other people in San Diego, there's lawsuits going forward. In Chicago, the one I mentioned with those machines that were wrong, there's lawsuits going forward. But they either go forward very slowly, or lots of times the judges will claim, well, you have to prove you personally were impacted by it, and you can't prove that your vote wasn't counted. Well, of course I can't, because I can't see inside the machine. Okay, then you don't have a right to actually question it because you can't prove that it happened to you. So it's on so many levels. I mean, honestly, you could sit here and talk about just a million cases in Arizona and Puerto Rico. The polling places were slashed by crazy percentage. In certain portions of Arizona, Bernie areas that would have gone heavily for Bernie, 70% of polling places were cut. It ended up in Phoenix area, there was one polling place for every 21,000 people. People were waiting in line for 5 hours, and then they'd get to the front of the line and be told, oh, we don't have your name, you're not able to vote. And this is in 100-degree heat. People are passing out and stuff. And that's if they chose to wait that long. Most of people would wait 2 hours and probably leave, I think.
So if you're going out anyway.
Yeah. And this stuff is done intentionally. This isn't accidental. You don't accidentally knock 70% of polling places off. You don't accidentally purge 120,000 people from the Brooklyn rolls alone. And there's purging voters, and Greg Palast, the investigative journalist, has talked a lot about this. There's purging of voters on many levels. And by the way, folks, this does not just impact the Democratic primary. This will heavily impact Democrats in the general. But I'm sure there's shenanigans going on both sides. But many states are just knocking anybody with especially with Hispanic and Black sounding names, are much more likely to get knocked off the rolls. Now, you could be a white person with a Black sounding name and then you'll also get knocked off the rolls. You could be a white person with the last name Rodriguez, and you could get knocked off the rolls. 1/4 of black people in Florida, according to Greg Palast, have already been knocked off the rolls. So,
I mean, you could then file a lawsuit against the DNC and potentially be knocked off.
Well, so yeah, that's another thing that's going on. The guy who delivered, I mean, now he's not a lawyer. He didn't file a lawsuit, but he delivered the lawsuit to the DNC in Florida. He then died in a weird death where he passed out in his bathroom and hit his head, and so he's now dead. There's no proof of any wrongdoing or anything. It's just like, what the hell's going on there? So it's just, and I don't want to say that there's any proof that anyone harmed him, but to add to the list of what the hell's going on here.
Well, I mean, if you can question, like I learned from your show that I think you're reporting on somebody else's news that, 2 of the 3 voting machines are companies that actually invest or back Hillary.
Yeah. Who was I was interviewing someone about that or quoting them, but they used to give heavily to Romney and Republican causes, but now they've given 2 of the there's basically 3 major voting machine companies, and 2 of them have donated significantly to the Clinton Foundation. And one of them is now, it's basically Diebold under another name. Diebold was forced to sell off their voting machine segment of their company. They, by the way, were indicted for quote unquote criminal. It was the wording was like criminal corruption of a global scale. This is our voting machine companies. It's like they were indicted for that, forced to sell off their voting machine portion of their corporation, and now under a different name, which I can't remember, that corporation is still running many voting machines with code that we're not allowed to see.
Now, if those were slot machines, somebody would have been in prison or dead.
Exactly. Could you imagine if slot machines never had to prove that they ever paid out?
Right. Well, sorry, we have it rigged. Or if you could see the code and then make sure it wins every 7th one, I mean, you would go to jail. That would be, this is only the election of our children's future and our futures. It's fucking cool. I mean, how the fuck does a company like that even get to invest or donate to anything politically?
Yeah, and then it's amazing to watch the mainstream media then say anyone who brings up any of these issues is, the article I quoted from New York Times where they didn't name me, but they went after Tim Robbins for retweeting my meme I had created. And they were like, oh, Tim Robbins doesn't understand that exit polls mean nothing. And he's such a moron and he's speaking his mind again. What an idiot. And it's like, dude, even if you want to say I'm wrong or we're wrong or whoever's wrong, like at least don't act like this isn't an issue. Don't act like we don't deserve to know whether these machines do shit. Like, how could you? You can say we're totally wrong, but to do that, you have to at least say, hey, but we need to see the code. We need to see legitimate audits of our machinery. And Election Justice USA just put out 2 weeks ago, a 100-page report, which I covered on Redacted tonight. 100 pages, carefully researched by multiple journalists and activists, election fraud activists and lawyers. And they put out this 100-page report, which I recommend people read it. It is a long read, but I recommend people check it out. And it's just insane stuff.
Yeah, it's scary, man, to watch. Look, maybe I go out on a limb here. Let's just say that maybe Trump and Hillary are all working together, right? So maybe one gets in as the same as the other. I mean, it just seems like it doesn't matter. I mean, they throw Bernie. Well, I mean, why do you think, brother, they were so hardcore about making sure Bernie doesn't get the primary? Why? I mean, that push for Hillary, what it looks like, right, is a real aim to cut Bernie out.
Well, here's the thing is whether there's any actual collusion between the Democrats and Republicans, which, by the way, you now have a lot of big Republicans endorsing Hillary. So that is surface level collusion, for lack of a better word, if they're endorsing Hillary. But they don't need to. I think maybe George Carlin said something like this. they don't need to get in a room and secretly talk to each other. They all want the same thing. They're both corporate parties. They want the business elite to get richer than ever before. They want to continue to extract all of the wealth and resources to a very select few. We've got a billionaire running against a multi-millionaire. These are very rich people that want the same thing. So they don't have to sit in a room with cigars and plan it out.
Right.
They know what they want. And granted, you know, Trump is a bit of a weird wild card, which is why you have Republicans getting behind Hillary. But you know, at the end of the day, they're not worried. What the reason Bernie was more of a scare to them than Trump is because Bernie was legitimately not one of those guys. He's legitimately not worth $1 million. He legitimately, you know, walks to work and things like he. I'm not saying he is the perfect candidate or that he always said every word that I agree with, such as endorsing Hillary, but he was not one of them. He was not in that boys club of millionaires. And the idea that he would, quote unquote, redistribute the wealth, which, by the way, whenever someone says that, you realize that all the wealthy do all day long is redistribute the wealth to themselves. So they're the ones redistributing the wealth. But the fear that he would take away from the richest of the rich and make a more fair, more equal society that could actually sustain, because right now you have them just setting fire to the golden goose. They're creating a world that no one can live in. So in Bernie's economy, you could actually come up with something closer to sustainable. And the idea that he might do that stuff was truly frightening to these elite that run our society. So it was far more scary than the idea that, you know, a megalomaniacal billionaire might get in the office.
Yeah, I said that. I don't know. I probably heard it. Just many people have said it, but it was the idea that they probably looked at it. You had the Republican Party breaking in half. The Tea Party psychos went one way already. Then you had the silent minority that kind of just stayed quiet as the Tea Party made them look crazier. And then the Republicans split in two. They're losing half that party. Then you got the Trump people that come along. A little bit of leftover. The Republican Party goes over to Trump. If they run against Bernie, I think they lose. I think they know they lose. Bernie destroys that. And I think they took the dice that they said, we got to help Hillary get the nomination, because I think we got a chance, at least with Trump against Hillary, the best shot we got, since all of a sudden the Republicans have really grabbed on to the psycho billionaire, egomaniacal psycho. I mean, that, and I'm sorry, that's clinical because I am a counselor. So I will I can diagnose that. And I'm telling you, that is borderline personality mixed with a tad of narcissist sprinkled with psychotic on top of it. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure you could do this. I saw this video. I'm sure someone could do the same mashup of Hillary, but it's a video of Trump just saying the opposite thing. It's basically him debating himself. And so he says one thing, then says the opposite, says one thing, so you know, says I've always been against the Iraq War, and then there's play clips of him saying, yeah, I'm for the Iraq War. It's like, and one after another for like 15 minutes, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this guy, he doesn't even know what he himself believed 3 minutes earlier.
No, man, that's a new kind of sick, really, because once you start throwing in the psychology twists of fame, money, last name, godism, when you start throwing these ideas in it, man, you get a really twisted fuck. But I mean, like what I was saying, though, is they knew that, you know, Bernie would have brought out, like Obama tried to do the second time, but brought out the young crowd. It brought out those millennials to get out there for that hope and change, right? Bernie was going to do that, and Trump was going to get his ass beat. Bernie was going to beat Trump's ass, and they went, our best bet is to get Hillary on board and trust the fact they don't care that she's a woman, and let's not play off that. I mean, I'm just looking at purely from a political chess game, you know, and as they look at that, because I think we all as a majority see Hillary as just your typical. She's just more of the same, if not worse. And that's where I think, I mean, Lee, how do we help the people, though, that are so anti-establishment, that may have been even leaned Bernie, right? But they're right on the idea of it being rigged. They're right on the idea of the, you know, the people basically locking it down, no system changing. That basically that's the only reason that they like Trump for some reason, is that at least he's a nuclear bomb to something.
You mean that At least it's like throwing a rock into the
Right. I mean,
placid lake of the establishment.
right, but they don't get. It could mean all world destruction. I mean, but
Yeah,
they don't. But
yeah. I mean, the problem is if Trump were kind of equally weird, but he wasn't a billionaire, he was kind of like this average guy who seemed weird, then I might get on board with the idea that, well, okay, he's not establishment, so he'll probably bring about some change. But when you have somebody who is is a billionaire, has been a millionaire, billionaire his whole life, it is just, he is a corporation. I mean, he is a walking corporation. And so the idea that we're going to stop, we live in corporate totalitarianism, basically, is what it is. And the idea that we're going to stop corporate totalitarianism with a corporation, with a corporate entity, is laughable, even if he hasn't been a politician before.
well,
So yes, Hillary may be more of the establishment, same shit that's gone on, but Trump is certainly not the way out. He's if anything, he'll cement the stuff that's horrible and maybe throw in some interesting things like a $25 billion wall, but it doesn't. It's not gonna. It'll shake things up, but not in a good way. So I think the only way we truly throw a rock through this glass pane of cemented corporate totalitarianism is to go outside of those two parties, to stand up and stand for things beyond that. And a lot of that is outside the presidency as well, because 88% of Congress is up for rejection this coming November. So if they have an 11% approval rating, how much of that 88% are we going to put back in office?
well, shit. Let 11% of high school students graduate and watch what happens. You know what I mean? Like shit. But we do live in a society that calls mental health trading one opiate for another. I mean, so I can see why the other side would go, all right, one billionaire corporation for another. At least he hates people that are darker than me. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what you got, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad to see, like, people are angry, and they're angry for understandable reasons, but
Sure.
he's basically figured how to channel that anger into racism and xenophobia and misogyny and I quoted Chris Hedges on the last Redacted tonight, who a year and a half ago said, when you abuse people this much, the way the American people have been abused economically, when you suck away their ability to live an okay life, you're going to end up with a popular backlash and a American fascism, a form of American fascism that combines national symbols with Christian symbols, and you're going to end up with a lot of violence. And sure enough, here's what we've witnessed. We've witnessed the American fascism that is Donald Trump. We see the corporate totalitarianism that is Hillary Clinton, and we see the popular backlash that is Bernie Sanders. Now, the popular backlash was suppressed, so now we have the corporate totalitarianism versus the American fascism.
Yeah.
To stop on a positive note.
Yeah, man. I'm like, yeah, some things you just got to let them echo and hope the person heard that. I mean, if you're listening to like that's where we are right now, man.
But so I think the piece of hope that is in it is that the people that woke up and got angry and got behind Bernie Sanders continue to maybe get behind Jill Stein, but more importantly, continue to care about a lot of other things and a lot of other issues and a lot of local elections, governors and senators and all these things, because there are people out there that are running clean campaigns, at least not taking clean money. That doesn't mean I agree with every word they're saying, but if they've made a promise and it's verifiable that they are only taking clean money, non-corporate, non-super PAC money, then you have a lot of people that are they're indebted to a different thing. They're indebted. They could still be idiots. Don't get me wrong. They could still be megalomaniacal if it's the wrong person, but they're indebted to the people that got them elected, as opposed to the money that often comes from a very select few individuals.
I'll ask you the last thing, man, because we're hitting that half an hour mark there, man. It's kind of a weird question, probably, but anyway, could you maybe throw out like a 2-minute State of the Union and maybe like a 1-minute rally the fucking troops? Like, give me that rampage, man. Like that shit that when you're in the shower and you hear it, or that, or a article you read and you're like, motherfucker, and you're ranting to yourself and no one's around. And like, I want that one, that thing, or whatever it is that pokes you in the side, that one shit where you're like, why don't people just get, can you give me that cognitive redacted rampage, man?
Well, I think I've maybe given it to you for half an hour, but
Definitely.
so far.
I'm being
But
greedy. Greedy wins,
no,
right?
I think that we live in a time, we live in very serious times. I mean, these are it's an interesting time to be alive, because what we do in the next 10 to 20 years very much could decide the fate of the planet. Both because of climate change and because of environmental destruction on a level beyond just climate change, or outside of just climate change. We are quickly becoming a planet that cannot sustain itself. If all of the world lived the way Americans live, we would need 5 Earths to be able to sustain. And a lot of the planet is getting up to the level that we live, where everything we eat out of disposable containers, and we just drive anywhere, even if it's 5 feet away. And we don't care to create a sustainable energy form. We know we're more obsessed with oil and other dirty energies. And so we live in a very exciting time. There were a lot of boring times on this planet. We live in a very exciting one. Now, what we do now is are we willing to stand up and say this is bullshit, and say this is bullshit on a grand scale? These two candidates can't even envision, they can't even give you a way that we could sustain past the next 20 years. They represent an extraction of all of the wealth and all of the resources to a very select few. Hillary Clinton gets paid $600,000 often for a single speech to a bank, and who do you think she's indebted to when she gets into office? Those same banks. Donald Trump has been a billionaire his whole life and has treated workers like utter shit, like shit. He had his own workers were protesting in Nevada during the primaries. They hit the Taj Mahal casino with his name on it went out of business because his workers were protesting and striking because they get paid nothing. He treats people like shit. So how do you think he treats the American people? So are we willing to stand up outside of the way? And it's not just those two candidates. It's the way our establishment elite and our media elite see this system, that they think it's okay, to have fraud, election fraud on the level we've seen. And this guy on CNN's reliable sources will tell you it's dangerous to even bring up the topic. Now, don't get me wrong, Sean Hannity is a fucking moron. But to say it's dangerous to bring up the topic of election fraud is carrying water for an elite that has extracted everything on this planet and will continue to. And they don't give a shit that our environment's collapsing around them, because they can move to higher ground. They can move to mansions. They can have helicopters to get out of areas. They can literally, there is, hurricane insurance you can buy, and they can avoid these disasters. Their private island goes underwater, so they buy another one, a taller island. They have ways out of this. So it's, honestly, to them, it means very little, the fact that we're witnessing our environment collapsing around us. I mean, look how much has been done for Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan, those people are still eating lead, and Hillary Clinton went and shook some hands. And meanwhile, why did that end up that way? That ended up that way because you had a completely corrupt system of government that was trying to save money by poisoning their people. They knew a year before that it came out, they knew that those pipes were poisoned, because they were having water shipped into the state houses so that they wouldn't have to drink it. So that shows the care of, it used to be the expression for the elite being out of touch was let them eat cake. Well, now it's become let them eat lead.
That, my friends, is a motherfucking redacted rampage. Man, hold on, man. Let me get my Guy Fawkes mask real quick.
Yeah. Hey, if you want to, if your fans are depressed now, they can tune into my comedy show where I actually say funny stuff, and maybe feel a little more, at least get laughs, at least help the medicine go down a little. It's called Redacted tonight, and everybody can check it out. every week.
Yeah, man. You shit, man. If my listeners, if you got sad and you didn't get pissed, you're probably listening to the wrong fucking show. I'm just telling you. We cognitive rampage, man. We don't cognitive and passive. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I like that. I like that name. I wish I'd thought of it first.
well, I love your hashtag keep fighting. I wish I had used it first. Yeah, you want to talk about
Yeah, man. And people can get it on, our show. It is on TV, but most people get it on YouTube at youtube.com/redacted tonight's, and they can find me at leecamp.net. So.
yeah, and we got a lot of listeners up in DC and New York and stuff, man. So your comedy dates too would be probably drop those out too, man.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. Especially if you're in DC, I just did a New York gig, so that's passed. But especially if you're in DC, I tape with a live audience here, and it's free to come, and it's a fucking blast. We grab drinks afterwards. It's a good time. Only takes half an hour. All you got to do is email redactedtix@gmail.com, TIX, redactedtix. But if you find me on leecamp.net, you can email me that way, and we'll figure it out. We'll get you to the audience. But I also have gigs coming up in Chicago, New Orleans, Asheville, North Carolina, and Charlottesville, Virginia. And people can get all that stuff at redactedtix@gmail.com.
Well, if you ever come down south, man, you got personnel to watch your back too. As you're saying all that stuff.
What city are you in?
We're in Orlando, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, once you cross a certain area, you just start hearing, you know what I mean? The banjo just start going, brother. Like Florida, man, we get such a bad rap, and it's hard being a woke person, being awake of what's going on, and living below the Mason-Dixon, man. There's actually,
I know.
Get this shit, man. If you go, I-4 is the main highway right throughout all the way through. You can go take it all the way to Tampa, and then just before it hits the big racist Interstate 72 or 75 South. There's a huge American flag on I-4 the size of a fucking arena. And then after you get on 75, there's a rebel flag the exact same size. And I'm like, they need to wave that shit. It says, welcome to South Florida, where you can be as racist as you want to be.
Yeah, my dad's from Florida, so we used to go to Jacksonville every summer, and I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. My high school was the Confederate Rebels, was the mascot, so...
Yeah, man. And you want to talk about bad timing? We put the book out, we did the show, and it looks like a fucking Republican. And I'm like, so some people they think it's some conservative type talk show thing, and I'm like, no, it's the elephant knows. The elephant is cognitive and smart. It's family oriented. It knows and remembers shit. And it's eaten mushrooms before. So it's been awoke and it's awakened now and transforming and transition. And
man.
So I got timed with that, man.
Logo's gone wrong.
Hey, man, I appreciate you doing the show again, Lee, man. Please keep really seriously keep fighting, man. We share everything you fucking do, brother.
Thanks, man. You too. And you got to get up to DC and hang with us sometime.
Man, I promise you, that'd be twice, man. Through the tour, I had to skip it and go up to New York. It was insane, dude. That tour was, yeah. I will definitely be there, man. I, again, appreciate it, dude. Thanks for even going over the time with me, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, brother. Bye.